Do you ever see this chord symbol pop up and feel traumatized? Have no idea what it is or how to play it? You're not alone. And I'm here to help. Let's dive in. Hey folks, Piano Man Steve here, creator of the Piano Man Approach online piano course, as well as founder of learningmusicisfun.com. Thanks for joining me today, and we're going to take a look at these crazy sharp 9 chords and talk about what they are and how you voice them, because you don't need to be as afraid of them as I certainly was for a long time. Anyway, if you enjoy videos like this, before we get started, I would really appreciate it if you'd give it a like, a little thumbs up down there. Subscribe to my channel so that you get notifications about videos that I put out on the regular with helpful information like this. Share this with anyone that you think might enjoy it. And, of course, leave comments down below. Let me know what you think and what you might want to learn about in the future. Okay, so let's get on here with it. So what is this crazy sharp 9 chord all about? It's generally written like this, as I showed before. You see a 7 in there, and then they put that usually in parentheses, but they don't have to. But you see sharp 9. So that means that we're going to be playing a dominant 7 chord, right, like this. I'm going to do it in the old friendly key of C, but we'll talk about it in other keys as well. And then it implies a 9, which then takes us all the way up there to that D. Why is that a 9? Right? Okay, so let's break the chord down for people that don't know everything about chords yet. So on the scale degrees, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And whenever you see 7 in the chord, unless they indicate that it's a major 7 by putting M-A-J in front of it, you can always assume that they mean the flatted 7, the dominant 7, or the minor 7, if you will. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Drop it. There it is. So we have the 1, 3, 5, 7. They call that the 9. And you could call it the 2, but here's the problem. What they mean by that is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. And what they mean by that is that when you're putting a 9 there instead of a 2, you're indicating that you're playing all of the stuff that comes before that. So you're playing the 7 and the 5 and the 3. Whereas if they just labeled it a C2, kind of indicates that all you're doing is playing the 1 and the 2. Okay? So that's why they call it the 9. Except now we have this extra fun little step where we're not just playing the 9. We're sharping the 9. There. So we've got 1, 2, 3, 4. Oh my God. How do you even form? Like, that's not practical, right? I mean, that's killing my hand, and I've got big hands that I can stretch out, and it's just absolutely uncomfortable. But it's got a really weird, funky sound. Okay, so this is not a super common chord. You're going to see it in jazz, and you're going to see it occasionally in rock and roll and pop, but generally not for long, prolonged periods of time. What it is a chord that's going to pop in there from time to time to give a little punch to something. It's got a lot of dissonance in it, and it's kind of it's a cool sounding chord under certain circumstances. Okay, I'll give you an example of something where you might have heard a sharp 9 chord. Okay, if you're familiar, I'm a huge Chicago fan. I love the band Chicago, and they're one of their, I think the second big single that they had was called 25 or 6 to 4. Peter Cetera would come in and he's like, waiting for the break of day. and the horn line came in and went ba-da-da-da-da, da. That chord right there is a sharp 9, you know, ba-da-da-da-da, ah. And it had this great, just kind of, you can hear it's a little bit of dissonance. And then, well, you wouldn't want to lay on that for very long. What you want is to shock people a little bit with it and then resolve it in some way, right? And that's kind of what they did. So this was in the key of A minor, and by the time you got there, it was ba-da-da-da-da. And this is an E sharp 9, E7 sharp 9. So that's the purpose of it. It's got kind of that. So you might hear it in kind of funk music, like play that funky music, white boy. Bum 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 bum. Again, we're not playing it much. And we just throw it in a little bit here and there because it adds that crazy, funky sound for a second, and then you move off of it because no one wants to live there. This is not a chord that you want to hang out with forever in. So now how do we voice it? Because I put in that, if you saw the thumbnail for this video, I said there's only one way to voice it, because there really is only one way to voice it that makes any sense whatsoever on piano. So if we think about what's in this, right? So we have the root. Let's take it in the key of C. We have the root, which is C. And then we have to play a C chord, right? Because that's part of it, obviously. Just seeing that when you see how it's written, C, 7, sharp 9, right? So the first thing it indicates is a C major chord. C, E, G, right? Now, C7, we're going to add this in. So I'm going to leave the C part out of it in the right hand, and I'm just going to let the fact that I'm playing that root note in the left hand be enough, okay? C, E, G, or 1, 3, 5, as far as the scale degree is concerned. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, okay? 7, and then up here we have the 9, and we're going to sharp it. This is the only way that you ever want to voice a sharp 9 chord. And that's strange because most complex chords, you can take advantage of a lot of different inversions. But to be honest with you, this one just doesn't work any other way, and I'm going to show you why. You always want to put your thumb on the 3 and then go to the 5 with the 2 with your index finger, and then play the dominant 7 with either your middle finger or your ring finger. Doesn't really matter, but I would generally do it with my middle finger. And then you're going to play that sharp 9 with your pinky. And here is why, okay? First, it is terribly impractical to try and spread your hands out far enough to include that C down here like this and then get all the way up there like that. That's not even if it's possible with really big hands like mine, not practical to actually execute it cleanly that way. So that's one thing. We're going to leave the root out. We're going to let the left hand play the root down here. The second reason is, look at what's in this. So we are sharping the 9, but you know what else that looks an awful lot like? It sure looks like a flatted third, right? So 1, 2, 3, flat the 3, and you get that note. Okay, so theoretically, there's a difference between sharping a D and flatting an E, but execution-wise on the piano, there is absolutely no difference whatsoever. And I don't get bogged down in theory like that because, frankly, it's not that important for being able to actually execute off of chord symbols. So that means that what you're playing is the 3 and the flatted 3 And if you don't put some space between them, the dissonance is just too much. So if I were to use an inversion, I'd say, okay, I'm going to play dominant 7, root, there's my sharp 9, there's my 3, there's my 5. Am I technically playing the chord? Yes. Is it effective? Not particularly. It just sounds like a mushy cacophony because the notes are too bunched together. There's too much stuff happening in too short of a space, and you're not getting the punch. You're not getting that cool punch and that cool effect of this really interesting sounding chord. So that means what you're trying to do is you want to spread these two notes that are sitting right next to each other. You want to spread them out as far as you can get them, which means nearly an octave from here to here. And then since you're playing this note down here, you don't need to worry about it, and you can just play the 5 and the 7. And if you absolutely had to, if you didn't have the left hand to put that C in, you could play it here with your ring finger. I still think the chord gets a little bit bloated when you do that, and I prefer to do it down here because it's part of creating space inside the chord, but you could do that, right? But I like it better when you just leave the root note completely out of the right hand, play it with your left, and boom, and you get that cool effect. You know, and it doesn't matter what chord you're on. If you are playing this in E, the same thing applies. So we're going to put the root here. What is an E major chord? E, G sharp, B, right? So we don't need the root in the right hand, so we're going to start on the 3. There we go. G sharp, B. What's the 7? D. And then, because I've just kind of trained myself, I think it's easier to think about, that a sharp 9 is the same thing as a flatted 3rd. And I'm pretty adept at remembering what the 3 is and flatting it. So I'm like, oh, so that'll be a G natural. But you could think of it as there's the 9 and we sharp it, boom. But you can also just say, well, here's the 3, and it's going to be the note right below that, only we're up an octave. So G sharp to G, and we get that space between it, and boom. And it's just a really cool chord. It's like there's not that many songs that call for it, but it's the kind of chord that when you come across it, if you don't know how to play it, you really are missing something because it's got such a specific sound to it. I know a lot of my followers are Billy Joel fans, and there's an album cut that was the title track to a 1989 record he made called Stormfront that's just loaded with these. It's and at the end of the thing says like, white water running, the pressure is low. Every time we get to one of those, you have an E sharp 9, an E7 sharp 9. Stormfront coming, small craft warning on the radio. So it's just songs that want that require that. You really are missing something special in the song by not being able to play that chord. But as I say, it's kind of tricky because, one, it's confusing as you're reading it. You're like, well, what are we doing? Are we playing a 7 or are we sharping the 9? What in the world does this mean? And then secondly, if you don't voice it just right, it sounds awful and you don't really get the cool effect. So my recommendation is to every time, when you see that sharp 9, and you might have to plan this out a little bit and practice it and And you might sometimes miss it if you're just trying to sight read on the fly, or even chord read on the fly. But what you want to do is you want to immediately put your thumb on the third of the chord, the 3, okay? I don't care what key we're in. We could be in B flat. Okay, so we're going to be on the 3. Here's the D. And then you're going to put your pinky on that flatted third / the sharp 9, which in this case is D flat. And then you're going to play the 5 and the dominant 7 in between them with the root down here. If you want a fun drill with this, just to kind of work your way through these, just try them chromatically. Just go kind of slow, but go. Anyway, really interesting chord, good for funk music, going to show up every once in a while in jazz music, and every now and again it's going to show up in rock and roll. And it's a good thing to know about, even though you're not going to see it that often, because when you do see it, it's there for a reason. It sure is nice to be able to play it and play it right. So there you go. I hope that you find this somewhat useful in your personal piano journey. Please join us over at thepianomanapproach.com. Check out what we've got over there. We have a method that's all about playing popular music, and we don't have to use sheet music. It's rhythm patterns and chords and some simple improv techniques that anybody can do based on the chords. So we have a lot of fun over there. And if you want to learn more about it, just head over to pianomanapproach.com and check it out, all right? And in the meantime, please remember my personal mantra. If you're not having fun when you're making music, you're doing it wrong, okay? See you on the next one, guys.